Well, hello there. In this fantastic box, we have the EasyThreeD K5 3D printer. Is it a bunny, a bear, or some kind of Among Us character? Stick around, let's find out. Well, welcome back. So, today we're going to be taking a first look at the EasyThreeD 3D printer. Full disclosure, this was sent over for purpose of review. I have not accepted any monetary compensation for reviewing this printer, and all thoughts and opinions expressed are my own. So, while we get started, I'm going to enjoy a nice cup of coffee while we unbox this printer and take a look at it. So, as we get started, we're going to run down a few specifications of the EasyThreeD 3D printer. It is 80 millimeters on the X, 80 millimeters on the Y, and 100 millimeters on the Z axis. It comes in several different colors, as the box can tell us on the outside. I have gotten the white version, but it also comes in blue, black, green, and orange, which looks more like a red. Supposedly, there's some LED light strips across the bottom to accentuate a little bit. Now, that being said, this 3D printer is supposed to be marketed towards a younger audience, and I'll be taking a first look at it in that aspect. So, without further ado, let's get this unboxed and take a look. Alright, now that we've got it mostly unboxed, we're going to take a close-up look here at what we have laying around on this little cutesy looking printer. Let's take a look. Alright, so far what we have is an instruction manual, what looks to be the little top portions of the filament spool holder. We of course have our little plastic scraper that most 3D printers come with. Looks like we have some kind of screwdriver, little mini screwdriver there. Looks to be a power supply, and some filament, USB cable, and we'll see what all this gets us. Alright, so we should probably take a look at the instruction manual first. Comes in a nice little instruction manual, EasyThreeD K5 Mini 3D Printer Instruction Manual. So let's take a look. First thing, it's going to give us a little outline of the printer, what all the various parts are. Tells us to take a look and see if we got all the parts here. Looks like we do. We got our card reader, our filament spool holder, plastic scraper, mini tiny screwdriver. Not sure what this is for. USB cable if you wanted to tether it, I suppose. Tiny spool of sample filament, like very tiny, and a little power supply. So, the instruction manual states that it has a build volume of 8080 by 100, and it is able to use Cura or EasyWare slicer support or G-code, max printing speed of 40 millimeters per second, layer thickness 0.05 to 0.2. It does state that it has a 0.4 millimeter nozzle on it. Now, that said, usually you can go up to a 0.3 layer height with a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. Somewhere around 75 to 80% of your maximum diameter of your nozzle is usually the max layer height. Now, it says, in order to get this little guy running, we're going to, no need for plate calibration, which is in here, as it's already set from the factory. We'll see how that goes. So it looks like I'm on the back side here. Let's go ahead and turn it around. There we go. Got the nice little EasyThreeD logo there. The plate is a removable, it's pretty much just a magnet with some kind of textured paper on it. I'm not sure if you can see the texture on that. It's almost like painter's tape, which I'm sure you could probably use. There's no alignment holes, so you just gotta kind of get it as best you can. So going back to the manual, it says for the first run we need to push the y-axis all the way back. And apparently you can only do this with the power off. So, taking a look here, unless there's something holding this, I'm not sure. Oh, it's just very, very difficult to push. Okay, I could see how it could get out of alignment. I believe these are just DC motors. I'll try and get some close-ups of that. So, we'll go ahead and push it all the way to the back. So, it's nice and aligned to the back. So what we can do is we plug it in, we turn the little switches in the back. There's a power or a home button, a feed and retract switch, light controls, USB port, and power supply. So, we'll plug it in and push the power button on the front to heat up. We'll see how that goes. Alright, so I kind of wanted to get a little more in-depth detail here, what we're looking at as far as buttons and controls. Basically, we're looking at a feed and retract button, a home button, power, and light button. And then there's also a little SD card slot on the back there. And then the motors on the inside appear to be some sort of DC motor. If we can look on the front here, they look like just regular little DC radial motors of some sort. But we'll see how it goes. Alright, and another one of the things I wanted to take a look at was, you can see how there's no real alignment pins in here for the plate. It's just a magnet that's kind of taped down or glued down. And then you just got to kind of put the bed back on there and align it as best you can. So, we'll take a look and see how everything else goes here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and plug this in and see what we're working with here. I was given a UK plug, so I'm not sure if I have a US to UK adapter. This is interesting. I might have a barrel jack adapter. It says we're looking at output of 12 volts at 2.5 amps. And I'm going to see if I have something that also outputs that voltage. We'll be right back. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, crisis averted. I do have a 12 volt 2.5 amp barrel jack power supply. Now the only reason I have this is because I have another EasyThreeD machine, the X1, which you can see a video on somewhere up here in the corner of my channel. Now, had I not had this, I'd have to find an adapter somewhere. I'm not sure if we can even get those anywhere besides on the internets. So, we'll try this again, plugging it in and getting it started. So, we'll just go ahead and put this in the back here. Ooh! Now that is some RGB action. So the other thing I did was kind of just put these little ears on it. It's also the spool holder. It's just 3 little laser cut acrylic pieces that kind of just come apart and then slide into these little slots. I'm not sure how stable that's going to be in the long term, but it's small. It should work. It says it will hold a full kilogram of spools. We'll test that out later. So, now that we've got this on, there are some buttons in the back that you can push to change the lighting, and we'll see how that goes. So, one button is lighting on or off. The other red button is color change and somewhat of a pattern change. So, we have a color change, a pattern change. That's kind of cool. I like that. It's kind of pulsating, you know. Ooh, pulsating blue. Let's see what other colors we got. purple. I like purple. We're leaving it on purple. Alright, so the instruction manual says now that we've got this up and running, hitting the play button will play the last loaded file on the SD card. So you can't select which file you're printing. It's just going to print the latest file that you put on that SD card. Doesn't matter if you have 5, 100, 200, it's going to put the latest one on there. So remember that. You can only print the latest file. Now, in order to load the filament, we are supposed to put the filament through the head into the tube, which is hiding in the back here. Once we do that, we switch the lever over to feed until it heats up and filament starts coming out of the nozzle. After that, we put it back to the center position, which is the print position. If we want to retract, we can put it to the opposite direction and allow it to heat up and retract until we're able to pull it out of the tube. Now, this hot end looks a lot like the EasyThreeD X1 hot end, in which case the PTFE tube goes pretty much all the way to the nozzle. So you're probably not going to get much more than 230C out of a machine like this. However, it does mean that the parts should be pretty interchangeable if something breaks and you have spares on hand. So, other than that, if you press and hold the play button for 3 seconds and then release, it raises the Z-axis up 1 centimeter. And if you needed to level the bed, that's what they give you this tiny little screwdriver for. There are 4 screws in here that you can adjust to kind of help level the bed to the nozzle if need be. The thing I do like about this is that those screws are out of the print platform area, so you could probably do it on the fly. Not something that I'd have little kids do, but something that you could do as their parent or trusting adult. So let's go ahead and get this little sample filament on there, see how it goes. Alright, now one of the things with these little sample coils is they're just loose and floppy everywhere, so we're just going to do this to see what's on the SD card and see what happens. So, we go ahead and we load it into the PTFE tube. It says to hold it there as far as it can go, and then there's a little switch on the back that we turn towards me, or to the left of the machine, to feed. So I'll go ahead and we shall flip the switch. So it says it takes a minute to heat up, and once it heats up, it should start taking the filament in, and we should start seeing filament come out of the nozzle. Alright, so I killed off the LED RGB lights because it was throwing off the camera like crazy. So we've loaded the filament by pushing it down into the PTFE tube, holding it there, turning the switch to the feed section, allowing it to heat up and extrude some out of the nozzle. Then we switched it back to the center position, which is the print position. Now it should be ready to go. What we need to do is we need to load the SD card into the back port and press the play button and see what happens. I have no idea what print is loaded on here, but it's their slicing, their slicer, their settings, so it should be pretty good. Let's give it a try and see where we're at. Alright, so I've put the SD card into the back. It's very important to note that the SD card is facing up with the metal contacts facing down towards the machine. Otherwise, it's going to get jammed in there, possibly broke. We don't want to do that. So now that we've loaded it, we're going to go ahead and hit the play button just once. Don't hold it. So if this is anything like the X1 machine that they have, it will flash as letting you know that it is heating up, preparing to print. Once it's ready, it should home and start printing. So we'll try and get a close-up shot of that, see what that looks like. Alright, here we go. It is ready. So it homed X and Y, homed Z, and it doesn't seem like it just purges anything. It just goes for it. Come on, there we go. Alright, so it looks like we're going to be laying down some kind of raft, I'm guessing. If I had to guess. Looks a little bit high. but we'll see how it turns out. Ooh, there we go. We got us a raft forming. What is it doing? It almost looks like a clover. Alright, taking a look at this. Looks like we have some kind of shape forming here. The raft is looking alright at that top layer. Looks alright. I really can't complain. Okay, so while it was printing, I found an interesting thing. I was messing with the RGB colors, and it would turn off in the middle of a print. Now, I'm not sure if it's because this isn't the actual power supply, or if it's because changing the RGBs kind of puts a load on it more than it can handle. So, as I'm talking, I'm sitting here pushing the RGB button, seeing if it will actually turn itself off. The only way to turn off this printer is to actually unplug it. Now, most people would say that's not so bad. However, you're plugging in and unplugging a barrel jack connector, which could lead to some sparking at the connector circuit, depending on connection and strength and other things. Somebody like Chep over at Chep's channel would actually be able to explain that better, but I haven't had a whole lot of good luck with plugging in and unplugging electronics to turn them on and off. I might in the future find some way to take the power supply and put an inline switch into it. That being said, the print has been ruined because it turned itself off for whatever reason. So we're going to go ahead and start it again and see where we're at. Alright, so I was able to confirm that changing the LED pattern or color with the change button, at least on this unit, does seem to fault it out somehow. It's a brief power off and power back on, so there may be a short in there. Those LEDs might be pulling too much of a current for it. I'm not sure, but it will stop, forget everything it was doing, and turn itself back on. And I got it to do it 4 times. So, the thing that I've noticed is it only does it when the axes are moving. Now, that may be because combined with the heater in the nozzle and the axis moving, along with the LED change, might be causing enough of an amp draw just to short it out for a second. Now, there again, I'm not using the actual plug that came with it because I got sent a European version, but that's why this is a first look and not a review video. So that's why we're going to take a look at this for a few months, kind of give it an idea of what's going on with it, get the proper equipment put back on it, and give it a real going over. However, it did start printing pretty well. I like the quality of the print, not so much the raft, but who likes the raft looking quality settings, really? So we're going to let this one go, and we'll check back in when it's complete and see what the quality looks like. Alright, so the print completed, and it looks like it's a little rocket ship, is the little design that they had. So let's go ahead and pull this guy off and take a look up close. It's hard to see as it's white filament. See if I can get this some contrast here. Let's see. Definitely hard to see on the white filament, but from what I can tell, other than the normal little kind of zits you would get from a circular print, which, you know, tuned by retraction and coasting settings, it doesn't look too bad. It looks like they tried to hide the Z-seam on the back, which is fine. And yeah, it's pretty impressive. So let's see what it looks like trying to get the brim or the raft off of this little piece here. It's definitely on there pretty good. Oh, there we go. So you see the raft came off pretty well. Looks like it's pretty good. Raft settings look decent. And, you know, a little stringing in there, so maybe a little hot, a little more retraction settings. But overall, I mean, it's really just the inside that looks bad. The outside outside looks pretty good for this little printer. So we'll go ahead and, go through a few more prints and see how it all goes. Alright, so here we printed a 20 millimeter calibration cube. Now it's really hard to see because of the white filament. There is a little bit of it looks like ghosting here. This might just be the Cura profile settings that they gave us being a little odd, but I don't see anything terribly crazy standing out. I mean, the surface quality is decent. The edges are a little blobby, but that's to be expected. So I'm going to go ahead and use some calipers. We're going to take a look and see what we're looking at here. We have a 20.13 in the X, and we have a 20.2 in the Y. Let's give it a Z measurement of 20.12. So I'd say that's pretty accurate there. So one of the things you'll notice is that you can hear a large fan, and that's underneath here, underneath all the electronics. There's a motherboard, and there's a fan underneath there that's blowing air into it. However, there is no part cooling fan on this hot end whatsoever. So anything that needs cooling is definitely going to be a challenge to print on this. The bed is also not heated. It's just a complete, magnetical surface there. And the only end stop I see is over here for the Z-axis. I do not see any limit switches anywhere for the X and the Y. So I'm real tempted to open this up and see if it's using some kind of sensorless homing kind of stepper drivers. I doubt that. Alright, so I let it go, and it auto-homed from the front, and it just kind of made it like a grinding noise, kind of like the Prusa machines do when they try to auto-level the Z. So you can see it's going to trigger that Z end stop, and then it's going to raise itself, and it's going to get ready to print. I'm not sure how it knows when it's hit its limit. It's very interesting. Might have to take this apart and see what kind of electronics we're running with in here. So I did a little test. I wanted to see how the cooling, or lack thereof, would impact this little machine. So I printed a Benchy. And yeah, this thing actually does hold a full kilogram of material. So printing the Benchy, kind of a quick look at it here. Whoop. So there's a little bit of under extrusion going on, and I will attribute that probably to slicer settings. Still have to dial this thing in. But as far as cooling goes, those overhangs look fine. Maybe it's because of the under extrusion, but that being said, other than that, and that's probably just a retraction temperature setting, I'm surprised that the lack of cooling didn't completely ruin this Benchy. So, maybe it's not as big of a problem as I thought. Time will tell. Okay, so what are my final thoughts on this first impression of the EasyThreeD K5? Is it something that I would purchase? It depends. If you're looking for something that is super simple, that kids can operate, it's definitely there. You don't get a heated bed, and even though it is a direct drive extruder, you're going to be limited by that lack of heated bed and lack of part cooling on the machine. It doesn't look like it's what their K1 or their X1 series could do, where you could add a small fan. There's not much room in that hot end going on. You could potentially take a small 40 millimeter fan on the back and possibly wire it in and have just air blowing across it all the time. and that may be something I do in the future. So, with this, it's a little bit easier to use for kids than an Ender 3, whereas you just put in the SD card, hit the play button, and it goes. There really shouldn't be any bed leveling required as far as an 80mm bed, but if you need to, you have 4 points that you can adjust, semi-adjustable. So, something that I like, it's cute, it has RGBs, it's very easy to use, it's direct drive. I'll be looking at using flexibles in this to see if it can print it, maybe adding a few modifications for some part cooling in the future, and giving it a real good putting it through its paces to see what it can actually do. I will also be looking at finding an adapter to use the official power supply that came with it to see if we can sort out what is causing that intermittent restart when you're printing and change the RGB color or patterns. So all that said, it's an interesting little printer for $159. Something that you might consider getting for a kid to get them interested into 3D printing, seeing as how it's nice and enclosed and little fingers can't get into the machine. So stay tuned, check out some more videos, and you'll be seeing a full review on this printer coming up very shortly. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.